This will be a game of Setons. I've actually already watched this game. This is where T-Nuck and Duck went at it in the middle, but this time I'm gonna focus on the back spot where VIP is taking on Berg. So VIP really needs to bring his best game. And a nice thing about, well, maybe not the nice thing, it's considered the most boring spot in Setons. It's in the back. You're sitting behind three allies, so you have a luxury of turtling or just ecoing for a while. But really, your job is to produce air after about the 10th minute. If you don't do that, your team will basically be not very happy with you, and you'll be responsible for losing the game. But those first 10 minutes, you're completely focused on Nico, so your entire economy is going to upgrading things, and that'll be a nice thing to look at if you want to learn what it means to have a nice economy in Forged Alliance. So before, so while we're watching VIP, let me introduce the six resources that you should be thinking about in Forged Alliance. So of course you have mass. Let me look at exactly what VIP is seeing. So mass is what you make everything out of, and you get it out of these mass spots where you build structures which can be destroyed or upgraded. So with this mass, you can make other structures, and you start with a certain amount. And basically the rule you should follow with mass, you should use all the mass you have. If you have mass sitting around, you're not optimal. You should be building something. So the next one is power. It's basically these structures. This is a tech one, which are also nice targets for your enemy. And what these do is basically run everything. Factory building a factory requires power. Actually, extracting mass here, the mass extractors will not work without power. So that's something. And the rule for that is that you should have enough power to go to do whatever you want to do next. So don't have too much, but have enough for your next project. Because if you don't, you'll power stall and you'll have problems. So then the next basically parameter in Forged Alliance, which most new players ignore, is your build capacity. And that's very important. And that's basically these little engineers. It's not entirely that, but these are the things that can build things for you. There's some build capacity built into most structures like factories and mass extractors, but really your control of build capacity comes with these engineers. And the rule here is you never have enough engineers. If you do, then you're probably pretty good, but you don't have enough engineers, and you should always be making them, and you make them from factories, which you see VIP actually making. You're planning on making four here and another air factory here, so already at minute three is going to have multiple factories and multiple engineers. So then the most important parameter in this game is time, and this is really what you need to minimize when you're optimizing your game. So whenever you're thinking what is the best thing I need to do, you want to be thinking of time. What can I do in the shortest amount of time? So no matter what you're doing with your mass, power, build capacity, anything else, no matter what strat you're doing, you just want to minimize time, which makes sense. It's basically your guiding principle. Okay, so what else is there? There is also space, obviously. It's on settings, you obviously have plenty of it, but you want to arrange it. It's a nice connected set. You want to keep it connected. And you want to make it in such a way that your build capacity, which is your engineers, which can live in this space, are arranged in such a way that they're helping your projects. Of course, then there's also the player, which is the concentration, so which basically means you gotta keep yourself organized and being microing. Here, microing is obviously pretty easy if you're in the back spot, not much harassment. But one thing you should remember in terms of microing, in terms of concentration, is that you most likely will have excess concentration. It depends on how much caffeine, how much sleep you have, all those other things. But it's a game, so it doesn't really matter. But if you have any excess concentration, that should be used in observing your enemy and scouting your enemy. So a great thing that happens to players who play an RTS, no matter what RTS, is when you stop watching your own base and start watching your enemy's base, and your base just works. That's when you really start winning games. If you're just observing your own base, you're scouting yourself, and people are going to be watching you, are going to kill you. So watch whatever excess concentration you have, use it on your enemies. So now if we focus more in on what exactly VIP is doing, so he has already upgraded some of these mass extractors to level 2, which is basically choosing to invest mass, his economy, not into guns, he hasn't made anything that shoots yet, but into your economy, which will produce even more economy. So a limiting case, if you only invest into mass production, you'll get the most mass, but if you're caught with no defense, you'll die. So here it's basically the balance in the game. Where do you spend your mass? And so far, VIP has spent it completely on mass extractors. So then another question that a lot of people have is, what? How do I upgrade mass extractors in what order? And really, the rule here is wherever you have the highest build capacity, that's what you should um, upgrade. So here you see his VIP is always helping his mass extractors to upgrade. So this is basically going back to the principle minimizing time. So the more build power you have, and you have plenty of build power to use your entire economy, which is good. You have enough NGs. That's where you will build. So the question is, do you put these mass storages to get that bonus to basically make this mass extractor upgrade even faster with these mass storages? Do you do that? Do you put these on there? Or do you upgrade one of your T1 extractors which is far away? So the answer to that question is wherever you have more engineers, that's what you should do. And if possible, you should do them all. Of course, don't do so many at the same time that you kill your entire economy, because a limiting case, if you basically spread your economy out through every single project, your time will really suffer. But if you can get if you have infinite build time at any project and you have enough resource for it, your time is basically zero. You get that instantly. Of course, you never have infinite build time, but you can get close to it in terms of getting as many engineers to whatever project you're doing. Another thing in terms of the long-term build power, what you should be thinking of, is that eventually VIP is going to be producing a lot of air out of this factory. So you want to keep a lot of engineers in this area so that you don't have to bring them in the past from other places on the map. And of course, one thing that we see here, he still has things like T1 mass extractors, even though he has a bunch of T2 mass extractors, and these being kept. And that's again, he's using the rule that you build wherever you have your build capacity. You see here, he has got a lot more things going on than just these lone mass extractors, but at the same time, he's got groups of NGs taking care of these. So he's not just upgrading them by themselves. Let's see what else is there to this game. Now you see here around minute 9 he has made quite a bit of power. You see he has a lot of excess power, so he's planning on the next project which is going to have use a lot of power for air, and that's why he has so much excess. It might seem wasteful, but he's looking ahead. So if you weren't planning on making something that costs a lot of power, this would be a pretty big waste of power. So now you see his NGs are actually moving in the direction of his factory, and at this point he's upgrading what is called the resource allocation system on his ACU. And the nice thing about it is that locally on the ACU you can build a very nice power generator like you see these. And the good thing about putting in your ACU, you can't really get bombed as easily. It's mobile. Plus, while you're building it, you get a very high amount of build power, so you don't need to use a lot of NGs for that project. And now you see that his power is actually going down as he's building that. And while that's happening, it's also really nice to keep in mind that you can maximize your space. So he needs all the space here for his NGs to get around this factory. He wants to maximize the number of NGs he gets here, and you just basically sacrifice structures. Even though this was a hydrocarbon producing power for him, it is more advantageous to get rid of it. Another thing, good thing to do is to actually structures like these T1 power generators, which were useful in the beginning of the game when his eco was just building up. It's nice to get rid of them and just use the mass that you used to build them. And you see here, as soon as he got his resource allocation, he's getting rid of this T2. So you basically want to optimize where you're getting your power, and there's always mass, for example, to reclaim. He has reclaimed about 10,000 worth of mass in trees with 100,000 worth of power, which have basically paid for all of his engineers that he's built. And you see he's got over 100 here at minute 11. Now he's getting his second resource allocation. So that's one of the things that Ann have. But you notice here is that he's already past minute 11. He's producing T3 air, and this is basically sacrificing a little bit of your eco. I mean, in the limiting case, you could just make eco and not make any air, but at this point, it's too dangerous. It's too far into the game to do things like that. You just might get bombed. So he is sacrificing the efficiency of his economy in order to keep basically his base safe. And that's the trade-off in this game. But if you're playing against a weaker opponent, and if you just want a turtle, you could simply just keep on ecoing your entire economy, and then as soon as you're maxed out, that's when you start making guns. The other limiting case is you don't upgrade anything and you just make air and drops and things like that to make for a much more exciting game. But unfortunately, since that usually requires really good teamwork, people don't do it as often as they should. So this is basically what your base should look like. You have chosen your most important project, which is air for this case. Eddie's got basically his entire build power, well, most of his build power, focused around it. His other projects that he's thinking of during this later period are upgrading his mass extractors, which he is again he's using the rule that you need to focus build power around whatever you're doing to minimize time. But really, a large section of his economy is going directly into making air, which is his primary job. Now he's got a nice air force going, and you see here he is not wasting the mass that had been already invested. So basically recycling a mass. And as soon as you get too many NGs around that factory, he hasn't stopped making build power. He knows he'll need more, so he's making more build power here. Of course, another project besides producing more mass by upgrading your mass extractors is to make more power generators, because these two resource allocations that he's got, they provide quite a bit of power early, but they will not be enough in the future, because the more mass you have, the more power you need to use it all. Okay, so that's basically how you get your economy good on settings, and how you get your air up. So hopefully that was helpful.